I read this book because I've read the Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. Uh, and obviously, this book popped up. Uh, I wasn't sure actually Black Swan was written first or Antifragile. Seems like Antifragile was written after Black Swan. So it was as Black Swan. This book didn't disappoint. It was awesome. Although it's kind of related to, I would say, Black Swan in the sense, the theme of the book, uh, not exactly. Black Swan is about how many times things change dramatically because it's unexpected. People can make all these predictions, but most of the predictors don't know crap, essentially. And that's what Nassim Taleb's whole theme is. And here he goes into one of the big things he goes into is not only about financial procrastinate or pro, pro, forecasting. I don't know why I'm saying procrastination, forecasting by the experts, but he talks about like all these academic experts, big corporations, government officials, especially the bigger government, the bigger centralized government, the worse they are to fragility. That's the whole thing. Because the people projected all these rosy projections based on the past or essentially based on the past, thinking that's how things will work, right? And the reality is that's not the case. Anything in life, once you're an adult, you know things never work out according to the plan all the time, if not most of the time, right? Maybe most of the time it might work out for a few people if they're meticulous and all that stuff. Maybe. I say everything is a 50-50 kind of like a chance or less, even less than that. I guess like somebody said, if you can accurately predict 51% in stock market, you'll be multimillionaire or something like that. Some incredible number. Just being over 50% in accurately predicting the stock market. Anyway, but here he divides the book into, I believe, six or seven, I forget. It's a big book, by the way. It's a long read. It took me normally most books I read 1 to maybe 2 weeks. This is 3 weeks read for me because I read like every day, maybe 20 to 30 pages. This one was 20 page max because even 20 pages was long because he goes very detailed, everything like numbers and everything into people, example, so on and so forth. So it's very thorough and every topic it talks about, including, for example, health, the fallacy of the modern medicine and the longevity of our life or the modern life versus the reality where we are fragile because more medication and more artificial stuff we stuff into ourselves, the more fragile we become to the changes. And that's the same with economy, government, more centralized the government, more controlling it is, more you see the disasters. Because one thing goes wrong, we saw, I mean, if you're living in US, you saw that like 2008. And then, 2020, everything went south. And then now you can see the effects, up and down effects, up and down effects. Nobody can predict. And then banks being bailed out, big companies being bailed out with taxpayer money, so on and so forth. So one of the things he goes into is about how there is no essentially drawback for these big corporations in failing because the government or something will step in and fund the thing because they are very fragile and they don't take responsibility for their actions. So he goes into in olden times like Romans, or I guess even Britishers, and in some countries Essentially, if you build something, if that collapsed, then you were executed or you were made to live under if there was a bridge built for a certain period of time to make sure it's safe, that you have skin in the game. And then henceforth, the people were very careful on what they built because literally their lives were at stake. Versus now, it's not most of the time. Small businesses is different, right? Small to mid-sized businesses, it's their money, it's their stuff at stake. Versus the bigger corporations, it's stock market, people's money, or perhaps the government money, like the big three, manufacturing or the big banks, city, so on, that was bailed out during the 2008 time. And that's his whole point is the more anti-fragile or more you do things like even like life itself, right? Exercise, for example. If you do something just same thing repeatedly, then you're not shocking your body or changing the routine to shock your body into peak shape. If you're doing like everyday gym work versus going for a walk or going for a hike or doing random things to exercise, shock your body, then you're not going to be in the peak shape. Same thing with the food. If you constantly eat 3 times a day, every day the same, so on and so forth, and you don't follow some of the fasting routines now have proven to really change your body and your health and everything. I do it. I've seen the dramatic changes in myself. So I can attest to that. More water only fasting or something you do, the longer length, the better the effects are. Anyway, that's kind of what it goes into about anti-fragile, being that too many people academically or even financially rely on the past history or the numbers, so on and so forth, without relying on actual reality and not hoping for the best case scenario or the projections. Be ready, essentially be open to things changing. And that way, when things change, you pivot, you change, you figure out a different way, and don't fudge the stuff to make the average stats looks good, which is very common. You don't have to read Antifragile to know that. We know what happened in like COVID time, 2008 banking crisis, um, and numerous other times when things where banks fail or big corporations fail. It's the people not really dealing with reality and not being responsible for the results. So like the CEOs, whatever, they're not held responsible because they get their bonus anyway and get out, right? For the big corporations. The smaller one, they are because they get fired or they don't get their bonus, whatever the case is, right? Mid to small, essentially. More like small is more health responsible, I would say. Anyway, great read. Anti-Fragile might be a tough read in the sense like it's a long book. So there might be, I guess, chapters or something that doesn't sink in well. But if you read Black Swan, this kind of actually gets more into the weeds about being that fragility resistance. By the way, he called all these academics and the theoretical, I guess, economic forecasters, politicians who want all this planned economy. Everybody needs to be safe, kind of deal, which is the whole modern way, right? We talk, oh, everybody needs to be safe and everybody needs to be protected. No, that's not how life is. Life is meant to test you. Tough. You will face toughness. I'm not talking about somebody being cruel to somebody else. I'm talking about life in general. We've all faced tough things, and that's how we become stronger. You can see anywhere. Like you see the body, you see the uh, economy, you see anything, like more tough times they go through and recover from that, the better they become. That's anti-fragile. So that's what he's talking about. Anyway, great read, great book. highly, highly recommend reading this book, or maybe listen to it. I mean, maybe it's a long read, so maybe you're not able to read it. So maybe listen to this book.